Hey, welcome to In the Chute. This is where me, the dad, is asked questions by him, the punk, and hopefully we get some answers that will entertain or enlighten. What do you got, Calen?
So for this episode, we're going to talk about dangers in cold weather temperatures. Got some listed out on my other monitor here. Man, it's nice having a studio. Uh, Carbon monoxide, propane, potentially running out of fuel. It could be wood. It could be propane. It could be electricity,
Gas, diesel.
gas, diesel, exposure in general to the elements. We had an Arctic blast mid-December, shortly before Christmas. And so all of these kind of came up as we were thinking of different topics to discuss. And it seems relevant when it's mid January and we're starting to get towards what is historically one of the more bitter times of the month or of the year for Montana. So some of the questions of what are the dangers other than just what I explained? What are some of the things that we do or others in our area when ranching do to take care of, mitigate the cold temperatures, and how do they take care of their livestock simultaneously? Because it's not just us; it's also the critters we got to take care of too.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, you got to try to keep those fuel tanks filled. You don't want your gas engines to run out. You dang sure don't want your diesel engines to run out of fuel. That is a it is a royal pain to get those primed back up and injectors with no air in them. Get a good full flow of diesel to them, and having diesel that will flow in the cold weather. You know, diesel's a little thicker and it will gel up. We treat our diesel. We get additive into it when it's delivered that will keep it from gelling up at a moderately cold temperature. And when it's very super cold, very cold, it'll all get gel type and run slow and not run your engine. So keeping antifreeze at the right temperature or so it'll take the cold, plugging vehicles in, keeping them warm, and that takes electricity, or you get them inside of a shop so that they'll start. Those are all just equipment needs, and try not to run them till they're thoroughly warmed up. Even though the engine and transmission can get warmed up on a tractor, for instance, or on a pickup, doesn't mean that the hydraulics on them are any warmer, and that's problematic. You can still
Which if
you still
diesel
break stuff.
if diesel is gelling up, the hydraulics is probably definitely gelling up because
Well,
it's
it's
thicker, right?
no, it's thinner because
Is it?
it's hydraulic oil. It's all thin. You're right. It is thicker, but it's pumped,
Mm,
and so you know it's hard on those pumps, but it will generally move as long as you got a level in there.
right.
So, but you're correct. It's thicker. I was thinking um, transmission fluid
Oh yeah.
in the hydraulics of like the bale handle. That's thinner, but it's thinner for design because it is built for those cold temperatures, and it's kind of counterintuitive, but it does work. And believe me, that pump, as you heard, it groans, it screams, and it cries when it's that cold. And you just kind of think, God, I wish we could get this thing into a warm shop, but right at this point we can't. So, um, personally, you bundle up. I was starting to feel a little bit of skin loss of feeling, and thinking, oh, okay, I've had this feeling before, where frostbite is just around the corner. So you want to get in, get yourself covered back up, and
Check out the card above.
yeah, yeah. You did some filming that day, and it
Mm-hmm.
was brutal.
Mom, actually, for
It
the one
hurt.
that we got to show, it's gonna check out where we're actually carrying the bales by hand on a calf pulling sled
Calf slide, yeah.
because we had nothing that would start other than the one commuting vehicle.
Yep.
And so we couldn't use the hydraulics. We couldn't use the
Tractor.
tractor. We couldn't use anything to move it other than our Subarus and our hands. So we drug that sled 4 bales at a time, 60 pounds a piece. So you're looking at 240 pounds of hay each pull. And we did that 40 times to feed the cows.
Yep. Expensive horse hay.
Yeah, it
Good.
wasn't.
They had to eat. I mean, we couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
You can't move a big square bale that way. You can't move a round bale that way. So
Just take some $100 bills from your pocket and go out there and just throw them to the cows. And that's kind of what happened.
that is kind of what happened.
But the moral of that is mom had to take video because we were busy moving, and she showed, like dad was saying, you start getting nips on your nose, maybe your lips, and so we covered up our faces like we were in the middle of a desert trying to
It's
keep our faces covered.
starting to get that when you see that kind of that waxy look to your skin, it's that you've pushed it as far as you can go. You still might get a little bit of a frostbite there, some damage to your skin cells and hair follicles, that sort of thing. But bundling up, and then of course when you are heating things up, and we put some heat under the pickup, boarded it up around it, put a space heater under there, tried to warm everything up to get it to um, ungel fuel and get that engine warmed up, and it started. We were able to do that finally, but that was a couple days later. You got carbon monoxide. Anytime you've got any kind of a flame to heat anything, whether it be a shop heater or some open flame outside or open flame in a barn, you're creating carbon monoxide, and that can be deadly. So there's some people down about 60 miles away from us over a Christmas break there that the entire family was killed by carbon monoxide poisoning because they had some kind of a faulty or an additional heating source that they tried to use. And it's tragic. One of them called for emergency help or 911, and by the time they got there, they were all dead. So it's not a something that just could happen. It does happen, and even with people who know what's going on, it can happen to anybody. So extra care in those kind of matters. And then when you're dealing with propane, um, you gotta know that you can have propane leaks. I walked in the shop that one morning, and we were using propane very, very fast in the shop. It's not insulated as probably as good as it can be, but when you got 50-mile-an-hour wind chills, that's sucking heat away from that metal building as well. And I went in, I opened the door, and even with my bad smeller, I could smell propane, and it just felt cold in there. And it's like, ooh, do I have something happen to the heater? Have I got carbon monoxide in here? Have I got a propane leak in here? So I didn't turn the lights on, opened up the door, or actually I closed it, and I went and got your mom and said, hey, come smell this in here. And is this a small leak? Is it a big leak? And we determined that it was really the heater had just flamed out because there wasn't enough propane to sustain a lighted furnace, but there was enough propane. It was an open valve to try to get a fire going, and that threw a little bit of propane smell in there. So aired it out, didn't turn any ignition sources on, because you can have an explosion that way. And let it air out, shut everything down, and then got some more propane here. But wood stove running a lot, cutting wood. You got chainsaws you're using. If you're using a maul or an axe to split, or even a hydraulic splitter, those are all hazardous, dangerous types of things to use. So you got to keep your head about you.
The final thing would be, we talked about us, we talked about equipment. What about the critters? Because I made a TikTok about the Arctic blast, and somebody asked the question that a lot of people ask us anyway, which is, do you blanket your horses? They were referencing it specifically for the cold weather, but I answered back with a TikTok. But I'll let you answer both the horses and the cows. What do we do with them for trying to help them out?
The horses are, unless you got an animal that is needing some kind of health care, some special care, then we don't blanket. They're strong, they're tough. They've been evolved for millions of years living like this. We've got no young stock. Those foals will come in spring. So it's not smart really to blanket those animals, because if you get the situation where they warm that blanket up enough and you're getting snow, eventually it will continue to melt, or the potential to melt through that. And now you've got a cold, wet horse, which that can be the kiss of death for anything. And you'll really lose some body temperature that way. The cows, the same way. They're tough. They'll find a place to get in out of the wind if they can. Horses the same way. They'll try
Not
to
that they
find
would
in
let you
better.
wear a blanket anyway.
Yeah, that would be kind of a wreck. And you haven't got that many blankets. We don't have large barns, so we've got barns big enough that are usable, but they're for 1 or 2 or 3 at the most animals at a time when you're calving. And that can be problematic. So we are very careful about having the ability to get a cow and a calf in, and it is not so much for the cow, is to be able to save that calf because they just cannot take that cold. They're wet, obviously, when they're born, and if they can't get dried off or licked off from that cow and get some warm milk and colostrum in them, then there's a high probability that they're going to get sick, or they're just not going to live long at all. They'll just die of hypothermia. So it's this time of year, I don't worry about that so much, but we feed extra heavy. We give those cows a little bit more hay, and I think we were feeding up there right around 38 pounds. I think we figured a piece during that cold snap, and they need it. And you can see some weight loss on some of those animals over about a 3-day period, and it was, it was remarkable how they do. But they come back, and we continue to feed them a little bit heavier so that they don't lose that weight and come back. And it's, it's a balmy 35, 40 degrees today.
How much are those square bills? Those big squares?
The big squares weigh about 1250 a piece.
So we're looking, normally right now we feed two, essentially 2,400 pounds of feed to the cows every day.
Roughly, yeah.
But during that time, for a couple days, we were feeding them three. So we're looking closer to 3,600 pounds for total feed for the herd to keep them sustained. And they ate everything.
They were eating it all. Yep. That cold weather was driving them to maintain that body heat and that metabolism. So, I mean, that's just something that you prepare for as this could happen. So I'm going to, give a little bit extra, and that's why you do it. That's when it's appropriate to do it. So, but as far as getting everything inside of a building, it's not feasible. Only when you're calving and, getting that calf inside, getting them warmed up. We'll have them in the shop. We've had them in the house. We've had them in the bathtub. Not for a long time. We've got things set up to where it's, we're right on top of it, but it could happen again. You could have a whole bunch of cows calve at the same time, and you've only got so much room for all of them. And that cow and calf should stay together if you can keep them together. But there's times you got to pull them off there and get them dry, get them warm any way you can.
And that's the dangers of cold weather temperatures, human, machine, and animal all at once.